Hi, this is Stephen, and this is Astro Indicator Update, Excursions into Practical Astrology. And I haven't done an episode in some time, so this will be sort of an update on some things, and I've changed my format a little bit. So what's happening today? Well, today we're going to be looking at the astrology charts for the USA, the New York Stock Exchange, and the Federal Reserve, and then we'll also look at the price charts for the Dow Jones, gold, and actually Bitcoin, which isn't in there. And then we'll move on and we'll look at some astrology for Trump and Elizabeth Warren, because I was sort of surprised at some things in her chart. So let's review. Here we have the United States astrology chart in the middle. And on the outside we have the transits, where the planets are in the sky right now. And in my last episode, which has been several weeks, I was telling you we have some slow-moving transits, sort of the heavy ones, Saturn and Pluto, affecting the U.S. chart, and they continue to do so. And so let's review. We had two stations within the last several weeks, and Pluto stationed last week. And these stations are when planets appear to be changing direction in the sky. And so when we had the Saturn station, here it is right here, it was at 13 degrees Capricorn, which is exactly opposite the USA Sun. In addition, it is squaring the Saturn in the USA chart. So a heavy Saturn period was taking place late September and is currently continuing. And there's just more and more indications that the U.S. economy is slowing down, which is Saturn, phenomena. And recession is in the wind. People are getting laid off. We still have politicians and Trump saying how wonderful things are, but they really aren't. And in addition, this is going to sort of continue, but it's the Saturn issue is very prominent right now. The evidence of a slowdown in September and October. Things may get more intense even over the next number of months, because we'll have Pluto coming up opposite Mercury. And Mercury deals with business transactions, it's sort of related to the stock exchange, the media, communications, but in the context of the USA chart, the media. And in the context, again, it's very important to understand what your context is. In the context of the USA chart, Pluto is sort of like the power centers in the USA, and I see the media as just an extension of what they would like to, what agendas that they have. And I feel that as Pluto transit becomes more and more exact in opposition to Mercury, it'll become more and more evident that we have a certain element in our society controlling the news. In addition to saying that about the USA, just this week, in fact tomorrow, we have the Sun, which just goes around, takes a year to go around the chart. The Sun, every October, which is often a time when the stock exchanges have issues, have problems, tomorrow the Sun is conjunct the USA Saturn. So we had this big bounce over the last few days in our stock markets, but I'd be very surprised if it continues tomorrow. There's going to be some news coming out. I wouldn't be surprised if, relating to, things slowing down in general. Finally, we still have Uranus in conjunct the ascendant, which can create some surprises, some shocks, something unexpected could pop up. So let's get into the New York Stock Exchange. I've already been discussing it. And here again, it's in the middle. We have transits on the outside. And what do we have going on here? Well, I haven't talked about it a lot, but we have Saturn in transit opposite Chiron. The green symbol is Chiron. Some astrologers don't use it, but the context for Chiron in the New York Stock Exchange, I mean, it's kind of open to interpretation, but it is kind of central in the function of an entity and its role in society and how it relates itself to other people, or in this case, the New York Stock Exchange, how it relates itself to the country. And we have Saturn opposite Chiron right now. And somehow I feel, and we have Chiron in Cancer in the New York Stock Exchange chart. And so to me, even though we may have, certain corporate entities, still making a profit, the man on the street, kind of the middle class, isn't doing as well. And I think actually Chiron in this chart may relate to that element, that section of society. And here we have Saturn opposite Chiron, and it is taking the hit of feeling restriction, feeling weighted down in debt, and so forth. And so that is going to continue for a while. But in addition to that, what's happening in the New York Stock Exchange chart is that we have Uranus conjunct Venus. And anytime we're looking at whether it's the Federal Reserve or the indexes, Venus is going to be, its association with money will be, most significant. So, in combining what's going on in the USA chart, what is going on in the New York Stock Exchange chart, this aspect in both charts, we have a Uranus that can deliver something out of the blue that can that can really upset the apple cart. And here it's related to money. So, the dollar could take a hit, suddenly could take a hit. We could get an announcement from China, Russia, that they're dumping more dollars, or, something like that could happen. And that we have a very elevated US dollar right now, and it's always relative to the other currencies in the world. But news possibly could come out. I mean, I'm not forecasting this 100%. Everything is sort of a percentage. When you see something in astrology happening, then the odds go up that it's related to the symbols in astrology. But, never can we say that it's 100% certainty. But now we're going through a period where the odds are going up that we're going to have an event that disrupts things. Uranus is the disruptor. It's the one that delivers a shock of reality to the situation. And this is getting stronger over the next few weeks. In addition, we have Venus conjunct Neptune. Here we have Venus by transit in the outer ring, same position, a conjunction of Neptune. So, and it's exact. It's exact this week, next several days. This, to me, indicates uncertainty. Somehow there's going to be more confusion entering into the, sort of the calculus of what the stock market should be doing. And the stock markets hate uncertainty. They hate confusion. And it should be that psychological aspect of the markets. We should see more of it this week. So even though we've had a big bounce in the Dow Jones Industrials since the middle of last week, it could be reversing itself. Let's just put it that way. That's what I see. So let's look at the price chart. Here we have the price chart of the Dow Jones. I'm using an ETF DIA as a proxy here, so the numbers aren't quite the same. But the shape, the indicators are all identical. As I've said in my past videos, all the vertical lines relate to the astrology happening in the Dow Jones Industrials. And I have seen correlations, particularly around turning points. When I look at the astrology of the Dow Jones and I plot those dates into the price chart, I can then look ahead and I could say, well, things can happen between here and here, but the more important movement is likely to be on this particular date. For example, here on this line I'm indicating here was very close to the Pluto station, which we had last Wednesday, October 2nd. A few of the planets, when they go stationary, they're so strong that they sort of affect the psychology of the collective. And in this case, they can reflect themselves in a change in the price of a major index. So here we go. Seemed like a low right there. We had a big bounce on Friday. And then the more interesting thing that I've seen in my research is that we don't have much for a number of days here. In fact, we don't, in general, when it comes to the stock exchange, we don't have a lot of powerful aspects taking place, actually, for a number of weeks. And so, I am not highly confident that this market is going to continue higher. That's my bottom line here. We may see some, just looking ahead, there is some bullish energy Tuesday and Wednesday, but can it override all that Saturn sort of depressing, recessionary energy that I was referring to earlier? I'm not so sure. I didn't even draw it in, to be honest with you. If I look way ahead, I'm kind of looking at my notes right now. Yeah, there's some energy out there. October 22nd, October 27th, which actually I think is a Sunday. That's what these lines represent. But I don't see something major in the astrology that should rationally keep this market moving higher. In addition, just the standard technical indicators are in a downtrend. The MACD here, MACD, it's just the RSI is sort of in the middle zone. So, and also I've drawn in these blue lines are resistance areas, and we've just bumped right up to a resistance area. We filled a gap right here, which markets tend to like to do, and then sometimes they continue going in the trend that they had been going, previously. So be careful this week if you are a bull in the stock exchange. Okay, let's take a look at gold. So I've drawn in the gold astrology, powered days or important days, key dates here, and they're vertical. We had a reversal right when Pluto went stationary. Again, a number of fairly sort of minor aspects have been taking place right now that have been bullish. And so let's look ahead here, because that is sort of the purpose of my research, is to be able to look ahead. And, we have some things this week. Even today, this is Sunday, October 6th. I hadn't said that before. So we have some slightly bullish stuff happening today. We do have a potential for some real volatility in the middle of the week. But we get increasingly, from a historical standpoint, from my research, increasingly when we look ahead on October 17th and 18th and October 22nd, so again, October 17th and 18th and October 22nd, those are definitely, have been bullish energy days. So we'll have to see what happens, because this is a daily chart. On the weekly chart, we're still way overbought, meaning these indicators are way up in this range. Here, they're getting oversold or ready to have a crossover. Logically, because we're overbought in the weekly, we could trade sideways for a while, maybe out to that October 22nd date. If we break this down green trend line that I've drawn in here, this market is going to go higher. And if we combine this analysis with what I've been talking about with the USA chart and the New York Stock Exchange chart, that Uranus energy happening to Venus, which could be affecting the dollar, we see correlations between all those potential, events and gold. So let this green line, downtrend line, really be a guide for you, because if we break higher than this, the professional traders, the algos, the computer trading is going to take gold higher. So Bitcoin, I like Bitcoin. I'm an advocate. I think it promotes independence, financial independence. And so, I'm a Bitcoin owner myself. So let's look here. So Bitcoin is, took a big dive. It's going to have to, create a base here. It's even dropped today on Sunday. This is a Saturday chart. We are getting very oversold, and we've been in this long downtrend. And we do have some astrology coming up right here that oftentimes points to a reversal. Like maybe on Tuesday. Look to see what's happening on Tuesday. If we get a bounce, I think that would be a confirmational, action to what's going on in the astrology. In addition, on the 14th, Monday, the 14th of October, and later in the month, the 24th and 25th, we also have some sort of grade A bullish energy occurring. You see these lines out here. So look for Tuesday, Wednesday. I think we're getting closer to the bottom, and look for a crossover in the MACD. Finally, kind of in the economic end of things, let me look at the Fed's chart. So just as with the USA, New York Stock Exchange, this is the Federal Reserve's astrology birth date. Okay, in the middle, existing current transits on the outside. And, the stock market just, hangs on to every word that the Fed says. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Fed comes out early this week, and indicates that they're completely ready to, backstop the markets. At least that's kind of the bottom line here. Because in the Fed's chart, we have Jupiter, pointing to it here, conjunct Venus, which in the Federal Reserve charts, again, going to be, solely related to money. And to me, this combination is one that's very expansionary, very supportive, indicating that they'll use their one hammer and continue to lower interest rates if they feel they need to. And I think that they are going to be definitely accommodating over the next several months. In addition, increasingly over the next several months, we have Pluto, a very, the sort of the power element here again in this chart. When you look at the context of what astrology we're looking at, we have it conjunct Jupiter, which again usually is an energy that is very generous, okay? And here we're going to see that the Fed is being generous to the banks and to the markets, at least in their estimation. So, I see that accommodation, which is a term is often used, accommodation continuing with the Fed. On a very short term, they're going to come out and surprise the market possibly. Very short term, this week, because the moon is going to be conjunct Uranus, that surprise element kicking in. And we have Mars down here. It is a 90 degrees angle to Pluto. Pluto is opposite the sun in the Fed chart. That's a completely controlling, manipulative power dynamic, and it's being activated by Mars this week. Okay, so that's why I say they could come out and be very explicit saying, we are going to help the markets. But somehow, that sounds very supportive to the Dow, but the Dow and the U.S. charts have a heavy weight of Saturn in their, energy makeup, okay? And I'm not sure if, the Fed may be, maybe somehow people may be realizing that the Fed is running out of bullets, and even their accommodative words, if they come out and make announcements this week, may not do the trick. Okay, finally, let's just briefly, I'm getting long-winded here, briefly let's look at Elizabeth Warren and Donald Trump, because I hadn't looked at her chart. This is her chart, day she was born. She was, I forget the date, but it was June 22nd, 49. And so she's early, Cancer. And lo and behold, she was born on a Uranus, with a Uranus tight conjunction. Okay, well, this is a sort of a dominating energy in her chart, and she's a strange bird, and I'm going to point out in a minute, I have troubles with the software I'm using clicking back and forth between pages. But I'm going to show you in a minute that this is the same aspect that Donald Trump has. His isn't quite as close a conjunction, but it is the leading planet. It's moving ahead of the sun, just like Elizabeth Warren. And it's my opinion that, one reason why, whatever you want to call it, kind of the powers that be in the the powerful entities behind the screen who think they're pulling the strings in the in the U.S. political and economic worlds. One reason that they completely attack Trump all the time is that he's not really one they can control. He's a loose cannon, that's come up a lot, and he isn't subservient to some of these people who at least regard themselves as being, the power centers. I just read an article by Charles Hugh Smith, which I recommend, which was something about, it's the historical look at what he called the imperial state. And it's, continuity throughout the decades over the last 100 years. And when they run into a president that isn't following their dictates, then they undermine that president in some fashion, like they did with, like in his estimation, like they did with President Nixon, or of course President Kennedy. And we have, I think, a similar thing happening with Trump, and maybe not so much, pertaining to Trump's intelligence or his policies, but he is just someone that they can't control. And from an astrological standpoint, that energy is very much related to his extremely strong Uranus conjunct his sun. These people, follow their own tune, and they're eccentrics, they're unorthodox, they're unconventional. They ultimately kind of take their own counsel. And lo and behold, Elizabeth Warren has the same aspect. Now, I'm not a big fan of Elizabeth. I can't say I'm a big fan of Trump. I admire independence. I admire, people speaking the truth when you can find it. But I just wanted to put this out there because Elizabeth Warren now may be the Democratic, potentially. I haven't checked the polls recently, but she could be the, leading the polls. If you go back to my Joe Biden video way back when, a number of months ago, I said that, he just started his campaign on the worst dates, strong Saturn, strong Pluto. Somehow his past was going to come back and bite him. And I didn't, I thought it was just ridiculous. And I think he's, doing kind of a face plant left and right. Well, anyway, Elizabeth, if she happened to win the election, let's just throw that out there, she, from an astrology standpoint, she could turn into being much more independent than the quote-unquote powers that be, imperial state, might imagine. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Let's just, just to prove my case here, here's Donald Trump, here's his son, 22, Gemini, the planet leading the sun on the day that he was born was also Uranus. It's in conjunction. It's not as tight as the other one. Just to finish up on the Donald, he has Jupiter conjunct the moon, opposite the sun, coming up this week, 1921. Sun is at 22, strong Jupiter. Sun is conjunct Jupiter this week, later this week. And, it just doesn't seem like this, to me personally, that the impeachment efforts are going to pan out for the Democrats, at least. I can see other, in his astrology, I can see where the difficulty and the power centers have been attacking him and so forth and so on. But his strong Jupiter in transit is continuing, and usually that creates just an element of being looked upon favorably by the masses. Let's just put it that way. So anyway, that's it for today. Again, my name is Stephen. I have a master's degree in psychology. I've been an artist for many years as well. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. I do accept Bitcoin donations, so I'm not sure how regularly I'm going to do these. I'm kind of got out of my weekly routine, but now and then I like doing this. It helps my trading and my own investments, and I'm just always fascinated by the relationships that I see in the astrology. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.